there with a dangerous tornado ripping through a town in North Carolina, pulling the roof off of a medical plant, knocking over houses. Look at this, as in Kentucky. Here, the governor is declaring a state of emergency after all this flash flooding. We're live with where these storms are headed next. Also new in just the last hour or so, shocking details from Alabama police about what a woman who went missing for 49 hours was looking up on her phone. Things like Amber Alerts, how to steal money, the movie Taken. But they haven't found any evidence of a toddler walking down the highway. We'll explain. Then our exclusive prison interview with a man who could be executed as early as tomorrow, trying to appeal his death sentence in a state that's had a lot of issues with executions. Why he says he's in God's hands now. Climate change and rising sea levels may literally sink a tiny island in Maryland, but people are still moving in. Why some owners say the risk is worth it for their slice of paradise. That's later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight at least 4 people are in the hospital after an EF2 tornado ripped through a town in North Carolina. This is the latest info we're getting in just the last couple of minutes. As you see some of the damage here, trees fallen over houses, roads, several mobile homes reportedly destroyed. Look at that, the roof ripped off that building there. There's a Pfizer plant where the roof has been totally torn off. Look at that. We don't know the full extent of the damage. Anything inside that may have been compromised, we're working to find out. The tornado came rolling into Nash County, which is just east of Raleigh. Look at that. Some lightning, winds up to 135 miles an hour. That is so ominous looking. You can see some of the debris flying in the air as the sky gets darker and darker. This tornado, just part of the wave of terrible weather, putting 10 million people at risk tonight. Potentially more tornadoes to come, along with strong wind, maybe some big hail. The latest round after the cleanup in one Kentucky town with flash flooding putting neighborhoods almost underwater. Look at this drone shot. You can't even see people's front doors here. It looks like houses and cars are floating in a lake of what used to be streets. The city saw almost a foot of rain coming down in just the last 24 hours. That could be a new state record. Look at that. With this flooding now leaving some people not sure of what they're going to do next.
Rich, by far. We work full-time jobs and all of our stuff got taken. Like, it's ruined. And we don't have renter's insurance. You know, it sucks.
It is such a hard situation, especially in a town like Mayfield, where about 30% of people there live under the poverty line. That's more than twice the national average. And if you're wondering why Mayfield, this town in Kentucky, sounds familiar, it's because back in December 2021, it was in the bullseye of an EF4 tornado that just flattened the town, killed more than 80 people in the area. Heartbreaking to see and heartbreaking for them to be living through more damage now, nearly 2 years later. All of it coming on top of the extreme heat wave that is baking something like 80 million of us. We've got meteorologist Bill Cairns with the forecast, but I want to get to Blaine Alexander, who's been tracking all of these weather developments for us. And Blaine, you've got the heat, you've got the air quality issues, and now this other round of flooding and tornadoes. Talk it through it.
You know, Hallie, this really is, unfortunately, almost becoming the theme of the summer, this extreme weather that checks almost every box, every single category. So let's start with the heat. Right here in Atlanta, we've seen unprecedentedly hot temperatures, but really that's what we've seen all across the South. Millions of people for days now have been in the path of this heat dome. You know, further out west, we're seeing places that are hitting triple-digit highs. So, of course, when we talk about this type of weather, we're not talking about just uncomfortable, but we're talking about heat that's just downright dangerous. So that's one box that we're talking about, that extreme heat. Now, let's talk about the rain. We've seen it around the country. We've seen it in the Northeast. Now it's focused on Kentucky. In fact, Governor Beshear there has declared a state of emergency after we saw that extreme flash flooding there in Kentucky near Mayfield. Now, what's really unbelievable about this, Hallie, is that that particular county broke a daily record for rainfall. In fact, they got more than 11 inches of rain over a 24-hour period. That's just unbelievable. And then when you look at those aerial pictures right there, it's unbelievable because you're right. Back in December of 2021, we saw the same area. In fact, some parts of Mayfield, believe it or not, are still cleaning up from that tornado back then. Now they have to deal with this disaster on top of a still existing disaster. So that's Kentucky. And then if you go just a little bit to the southeast, down in North Carolina, we can talk about that tornado. That's something that just ripped through this afternoon. You see the images there of that Pfizer facility. Now, we're getting reports that there is heavy damage inside, that some of the medicine, of course, that's stored inside could have been heavily damaged as well. But it's not just that Pfizer facility. We've seen pictures coming out of there of homes that have been devastated. Emergency officials earlier today were urging everybody in the area to stay off the roads. They say that the roads are damaged. They had to close the interstate there for quite some time. So you can imagine just traffic backed up for quite a way. This is really just a snapshot of some of the extreme weather, Hallie, that we're seeing. Now, remember, we're officially hitting 4 weeks of summer today, and this is becoming, again, quite a trademark of what we've seen throughout the summer. And back here in Atlanta with the heat, that's showing no sign of cooling down as well. Many people are still trying to search for some relief, Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, thank you so much for that rundown. Lots going on. Meteorologist Bill Cairns knows it. Talk us through about what we've learned about this now EF2 tornado in North Carolina, in Nash County there, and the risk of more storms tonight. What should we be bracing for?
Yeah, mercy. That's what, I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So this was at 12:30. So this was at noon. This was not on a tornado watch. When the tornado first touched down, it was not on a tornado warning. This was kind of sudden and kind of unpredicted. And we're very lucky and thankful with this strong of a tornado that we're not hearing and reporting about deaths. Yes, we've had injuries. People going to the hospital. But middle of the day, this strong with little warning, it could have been a lot worse. So this is I-95. This is about 30 minutes to the northeast of Raleigh. This is Rocky Mount right here, and this is where the tornado path was. It was on the ground likely for about 20 minutes, too, so it wasn't just like a short little blip. I mean, it was, a half hour of, oh, boy, this looks pretty bad. And now that storm has just cleared Virginia Beach in the Norfolk area. Still a severe thunderstorm warning there. That's about to end as it exits Virginia Beach. We still have a tornado watch for the New Bern area to Kinston, Morehead City, the lower portion of the Outer Banks. So far, no other reports of tornadoes. And that rainfall in Kentucky was just off the charts for this was 4 a.m. to noon, the radar loop. Here's Mayfield right here. Just one thunderstorm after another. And it wasn't just Mayfield. A big portion of southern Illinois into western Kentucky had this 5 to 7, and this is that 10-inch rainfall. And in case you were wondering, the old Kentucky record before this was 10.5 inches of rain in Louisville in 1997. So we beat that easily by about 3/4 of an inch of rain. There's still some flash flood warnings for that area, too, from Paducah to Mayfield. And how about this, Hallie? So you wake up in the morning, right, and this the coolest, the lowest temperature it was for the 24-hour period in Phoenix was 97 degrees. That broke the all-time record, and that happened early this morning. So we just keep piling these records one after another, and it's just beginning. There's no end in sight.
As you said, mercy, please. Bill Cairns, thank you. I know you'll be tracking all of that throughout the night. Appreciate it. Let's take you to Alabama, where we are just hearing from police in the last couple of hours with new details in the case of a woman who went missing there for 48 hours. With police sharing some extraordinary details about what Carly Russell's online searches looked like in the days and the hours leading up to her disappearance. Apparently, police say she was searching stuff like, do you have to pay for Amber Alert? How to take money from a register without being caught? The movie Taken, and more. Right now, police say there's no indication a crime was even committed. But the big question now, where did Carly Russell go after she called police about seeing a toddler walking down an interstate? She said, listen.
We pretty much know exactly what took place from the time she left work until she got on the 911 call, and we can see getting out of the car on the interstate from that footage. And after that, I think she only knows. We don't know.
I want to bring in Sam Brock, who's following this story. He is joining us now live. So, Sam, police say that there is no indication that mental illness is a factor here, but these details about these online searches are adding to just the murkiness around this. Talk us through some of what we know.
Isn't it amazing, Hallie, that they would admit that it's just they have no idea where she went? And I think police did not come out today from Hoover Police Department and say there was not an abduction, but they pretty much made the strongest case they possibly could, that it seems extremely, extremely likely. And I'll give you a couple of examples on that. One is prior to her going to the highway, Interstate 459, they say she went to work, she took out a bathrobe, toilet paper, got food, and then additional snacks. Those snacks were never found. Went to the highway, and then they sort of geo-tracked her phone and saw that as she is on the phone with 911 reporting this toddler with detail, I might add, he's 3 to 4 years old, he's wearing a white shirt, it looked like he might be in a diaper, she moved 600 yards. 600 yards is the equivalent, according to the police chief, but we don't need him for that to know, 6 football fields. And so I asked him, what does that mean to you? He says, to me, it means I got kids and grandkids. I know a lot of people here do as well. Can you think a toddler or envision a scenario in which a toddler would be walking that far down the highway as she's tracking him or following along with him? Seemed really improbable. As for the internet searches that she allegedly made, or police say that she did make in the days leading up to her disappearance, do you have to pay for an Amber Alert? She looked for a bus ticket, a one-way bus ticket from Birmingham to Nashville. And so all of these things they're really presenting as a portrait of what makes it seem incredibly likely, or unlikely, excuse me, that there was an abduction. As for the abduction itself, she says that she saw a man mumbling coming out onto the highway, took her into an 18-wheeler, then another car, a man with orange hair. At some point, she's able to break free, and then she's abducted again by the same man and a woman who blindfold her, strip her down, and don't have any sort of sexual misconduct, but take photos of her, and then she's dropped off or breaks free somewhere in West Hoover and walks back home. That is Carly Russell's tale. That's what she said. That's what her parents are sticking behind right now, at least as of the last time we spoke to her a few days ago. But police really tried to puncture a lot of holes in this narrative.
But so what happens next, right? Because there are still, as you've laid out, a lot of questions here. Clearly, they've spoken to Carly Russell, but clearly they have more maybe concerns or at least questions about what happened. They also say there's no evidence a crime was committed here. Where does this investigation go?
Right, which is a great point, by the way. They were asked directly, are you considering criminal charges here? They said, we haven't even thought about that.
Yeah.
But where do we go from here? They said they're trying to respect the privacy right now of Carly. We know she was in a very fragile state. Her parents said that when she got home that night, they went to hug her, and they really only lasted a couple of seconds because she was just too much in a bad state, in a state of shock. Here's what the police chief said about trying to speak to Carly once again.
I think our detectives have talked to the parents, and we're ready to talk as soon as she's ready. So, she called right now. We're ready.
Hallie, one final point. I did follow up with the police chief and say, did you speak to Carly's parents? Why do you think they're so adamant that there was an abduction here? His response was, their parents. They want to believe their child.
That's right.
There's a sympathy level there. But in the end of the day, you're looking at all these pieces of evidence and just this giant vacuum of where she went or didn't go. No one knows, but they think it is extremely unlikely that an abduction was behind it.
Sam Brock, live for us there in Hoover, Alabama. Sam, thank you very much. Back here in Washington in just the last couple of hours, we are learning that former President Trump is basically saying, hey, thanks, but no thanks to special counsel Jack Smith's offer to come and have him testify in front of a federal grand jury in D.C., as we're getting now a clearer picture of the charges he could face, a clearer picture of the scope of this investigation against him. Remember, we do know this investigation is colloquially against him because he's gotten a target letter. He himself has told us that in the special counsel investigation into schemes to overthrow the legitimate 2020 election. 2 attorneys tonight familiar with this letter tell our team it talks about 3 possible charges for Mr. Trump. First, depriving somebody of their rights. Maybe their voting rights. It's not clear if there's a specific individual or individuals plural this would involve. Second, conspiracy to defraud the United States. And third, tampering with a witness, something we know that former Vice President Mike Pence faced some questions about. I want to bring in Garrett Hake, who's been reporting this story out for us tonight. So, Garrett, while we lift ourselves out of the weeds, because there are so many weeds we can get lost in here, right? Big picture. This is not an exhaustive list of the charges he could face. It is a kind of roadmap to the charges he could face. And they come with some real prison time here. I mean, this is serious stuff. It's not the most serious stuff he could face, but it's real.
Yeah, look, it's a roadmap without the specific streets on it even. I mean, what you're seeing here are not even really charges. They're broad categories of things in which the former president could potentially be charged underneath. But the upshot of it is even the most mild sentencing on some of these would be 5 years. You're looking at potentially 20-year charges on some of the obstruction-related counts. It runs a spectrum, and we don't even know how many counts we're dealing with here. But this is a very serious sort of package of things that the former president is dealing with. And, we're not privy to exactly what's going on behind the scenes in Bedminster where he is right now, but clearly they're adjusting their political and their legal strategy with an expectation they're going to see an indictment, perhaps very soon, on a host of these charges, not just, item 1, 2, and 3.
And to remind people, when you get a target letter, it typically means you are probably likely to get indicted at some point in the near future.
Almost certain to be indicted. I mean, it's a very rare when you talk to former prosecutors, U.S. attorneys, they will tell you, yeah, it happens where somebody, doesn't get indicted on a charge like this, but it is far more likely that you're going to see charges forthcoming, perhaps sooner rather than later.
That's why we're talking about this. We're not getting over our skis. We are simply following the facts of where this goes. One of the big reporting targets in the last 24 hours have been, is anybody else going to get indicted related to this scheme federally to try to overturn the 2020 election? Do we know anything more about that?
Well, look, I think it looks more likely than it did even 24 hours ago, based on the conduct of Donald Trump and on what we've learned from what the investigators have been looking at. I mean, the scope of this investigation is massive.
It's huge.
Every day we're learning new things that investigators have looked into. So today we learned that they went after surveillance video from the arena in Fulton County, Georgia, where votes were being counted. Yesterday we learned they talked to the governor of Arizona about his conversations with Donald Trump, and we learned they talked to election officials in Wisconsin. When you take all these things together, you can imagine a world in which some of these fake electors from these various states get charged. Perhaps you have people who are working on the ground in individual states on these conspiracy elements that get charged. And then there's Donald Trump's own behavior today. On social media today, he's been on a tear about the idea that now the prosecutors are going after lawyers. They're attacking lawyers. Well, there's a lot of lawyers who have legal exposure in this case. Everyone from somebody like a John Eastman, who was advising Donald Trump about ways to get around the actual election results, to Rudy Giuliani, who was basically the public face of the Stop the Steal effort, to even lawyers who work for Donald Trump now who've been advising him on this case. So there does seem to be at least the possibility there's something going on behind the scenes. Perhaps more people are finding out that maybe they got some mail they didn't want today from the special counsel's
And I know
office.
that if we get that confirmed, you will let us know.
You'll be the first to know.
Oh, my gosh. Thanks, Garrett. So, you talk about what the former president's been doing, this reaction of his. We've seen some of those posts. You also have some fascinating reporting, because we've been talking a lot about on this show, too, the political reaction, the way that some of his allies on Capitol Hill, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, for example, have really backed him up when we learned about this target letter. There's more threads to pull on that story. Explain.
So the defense you see of Donald Trump from his allies, particularly in the House, is sometimes organic, but not always. And in this case, it was not at all perhaps organic. We know that Donald Trump, according to two sources familiar with these calls, made phone calls to both Kevin McCarthy and Elise Stefanik, so the number 1 and the number 4 House Republicans, on Tuesday, around the same time he was publishing this post on Truth Social, urging them to both defend him publicly and to encourage their colleagues to do so. Look, you covered Donald Trump in the White House. You know this as well as anybody. This is someone who wants not just loyalty, but public loyalty.
That's right.
Professed often and preferably on television, and that's what he's gotten from those two lawmakers.
Loyalty that is sometimes, but not always, a two-way street.
Sometimes.
Garrett Haake, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Appreciate it. So tonight, the State Department is in talks with both South Korea and Sweden to try to figure out what to do about this U.S. soldier who's now in custody in North Korea. This is the guy who ran across the demarcation line, essentially, between the South and the North. Listen to this.
We're still gathering facts, and I want to be very clear that the administration has and will continue to actively work to ensure his safety and return him home to his family.
It is just a very strange story as we're getting more and more details into us. Our team talked with a New Zealand tourist about how she saw the person you see here, Private Second Class Travis King, suddenly sprint into North Korea. She described him as running incredibly fast, so quick that nobody could stop him.
My initial thought was like, oh my God, he's obviously doing that as a TikTok stunt, and that's the stupidest thing you could ever do. Then he just didn't stop, and then the soldiers reacted and chased after him.
I mean, clearly not a TikTok stunt, or if it is one gone terribly wrong. She shared this picture where you can apparently see the back of King's head as he's standing with her tour group. NBC News, we should note, has not been able to independently confirm that is him. U.S. officials talking anonymously to the Associated Press said King had been serving time in prison in South Korea on assault charges. He was released last week, was on his way home when he basically, hooked up, blended in with this group of tourists heading for this private tour of the demilitarized zone, which you're seeing here, separating North and South Korea. Keir Simmons is joining us now. So, bottom line, however he got there, there is now an American soldier being held by North Korea. What do the negotiations look like to get him back?
Well, Hallie, you have to heat up diplomatic relations from the deep freeze. I'm trying to think, before this week, I'm not sure whether on Hallie Jackson now, you and I have even talked about North Korea. It's been so off the radar, right? I'm trying to remember. I think that's right. And yet the tensions have been building. One of the reasons why we haven't really been talking about it is because nothing's been happening beyond continual tests of ballistic missiles by the North Koreans. That's the position that they now have to try and get started from. And just take a listen to the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations talking about just like this starting point, this very, very honestly difficult starting point.
We have made an effort to engage diplomatically with this government. They've not accepted, but it's not for lack of trying on our side.
So, Hallie, the way that the U.S. talks to North Korea is through Sweden. So it's through a second party, if you like. That gives you a picture. And just imagine, because, you know, the U.S. is clearly just trying to figure out itself what went on. Now, U.S. nationals have been released within weeks by North Korea in the past. So this could play out quickly or not. We don't know.
You know, some of the things that we do know, that description from that tourist who was with him apparently on this tour group who said he just bolted. Officials say it was willful. He did it, I mean, apparently, obviously, voluntarily, right? And we know that this happened apparently after he was released from a prison in South Korea where he'd been detained, essentially, where he'd been serving some time. What else do we know? Why was he being sent back to the U.S., Kieran? Again, I know that there's some mystery surrounding this, but do we have any clarity tonight? Yeah,
so much mystery. There does, although, appear to have been a series of events that many folks watching will know about already. But just think about this accusation, for example, that he attacked a South Korean police car. What might have been going through his mind? Take a listen to his family.
You know, because he never acted like that. You know, Travis is a nice guy. He really, you know, he's one of my best grandkids. You know, he mind his own business. He really do.
Something just got to be going on in his head to make him feel like he needs to stay there or whatever. Like, I don't know.
He was supposed to be heading back to the U.S., Hallie, and then he kind of escaped that plan and set off and now is in North Korea. You kind of throw your hands up and wonder what he was thinking, frankly.
Well, and you throw your hands up and wonder, how are they going to get him back?
Yeah.
All right, Keir Simmons, thank you so much. We'll talk again. I know more on this. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Let's talk about what's going down not too far from where I'm sitting on Capitol Hill. A pair of IRS whistleblowers sounding the alarm with some pretty intense testimony, in their view, telling a House committee that the Justice Department meddled and mishandled the investigation into the president's son, Hunter Biden. Watch.
Prosecutors did not appear to follow the normal investigative process.
At every stage, decisions were made that benefited the subject of this investigation.
So this Republican-led House committee claims the Department of Justice slow-walked its investigation of Hunter Biden and let him off easy. You are taking a live look, by the way, at that hearing. It is long. It is going into the evening here in Washington. It's about 5:20 Eastern time, local. Remember, Hunter Biden got a plea deal earlier this month. He pleaded guilty to a couple of federal misdemeanor counts for failing to pay his taxes properly. He also faces a separate felony gun possession charge that'll probably be dismissed if he meets certain conditions. The Biden administration telling our team in a statement that House Republicans are, in their words, staging partisan stunts to try to damage the president politically. Let's bring in Hallie on Capitol Hill. So, Hallie, let's just big picture this, right? You've got these two whistleblowers, one of whom is coming out and saying, hey, I'm a Democrat. I'm a gay Democrat married to with a man. I'm essentially trying to say his bona fides are clean from a conservative Republican perspective. Again, his words, not mine. Who's saying that he and this other whistleblower, so to speak, believe that the Department of Justice mishandled this investigation. What do we know? What are the facts of the matter here?
Yeah, mishandled the investigation, they're saying, from an IRS perspective, from their capacity as people who are experts having worked in that field. They're going forward saying things like the prosecutor who was in charge of the Hunter Biden case was hamstrung. Of course, that prosecutor has said in the past that he was given the tools that he needed to do the investigation the way he wanted to do them. Nevertheless, these are what some of the claims sounded like from those so-called whistleblowers. Watch.
It appeared to me, based on what I experienced, that the U.S. attorney in Delaware in our investigation was constantly hamstrung, limited, and marginalized by DOJ officials, as well as other U.S. attorneys.
Nevertheless, though, again, we have heard from that U.S. attorney at the center of it, a guy who was Trump appointed, because, again, this investigation started during the Trump years, but this prosecutor saying that he wasn't told he couldn't subpoena certain people, he wasn't told that he couldn't bring these cases within certain jurisdictions. So these allegations are out there, but they don't exactly bear out with what we've heard from the prosecutors at the center of this case.
So what are Democrats pointing to in today's hearing, Hallie? Are they pointing out the fact that, as you just did, that this started under the Trump administration?
Certainly, that's one of the things that they've pointed to. And look, this is a committee that has Chairman Jamie Raskin on it. He is the ranking Democratic member here, someone who's no stranger to deep conspiracies, frankly, on the right. He did the January 6th committee and thusly was well aware of the fact that the Hunter Biden probes were things that Republicans were regularly bringing up as sort of a counteroffensive to help offset, really, the things that were being said about former President Donald Trump. This is one of the things that Raskin leveled as a sort of defense today. Watch.
Their frustrations and disagreements with their supervisors, as well as with Mr. Weiss and his team of prosecutors. The key point, Mr. Chairman, that America needs to understand is that the only political interference at play here is coming from Donald Trump and my Republican colleagues.
So Raskin there, of course, echoing what you heard from the White House as well, Hallie.
Hallie, we're calling these folks whistleblowers here, these two individuals. That is colloquially a term that a lot of people know. There is also a formal whistleblower process with formal types of protections. Do we know if these two individuals, these two agents have gone through that process?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, especially because one of these was a so-called whistleblower who wasn't named until we actually saw him in the hearing room this morning. The Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer had taken a lot of steps to make sure that this person's identity wasn't revealed until he was actually before the committee. And so we did learn something from that today. I think the other thing that was so striking was the fact that this was an Oversight Committee hearing, but we had multiple chairmen like Jim Jordan, the head of the Judiciary Committee, Jason Smith, the head of the Ways and Means Committee, and even the head of the Intel Committee, Congressman Turner there. So it was, I think, meant to show that this is something that, yes, is in front of oversight, but really does stretch over many Republican committees.
It is stretching, too, into its fifth hour there on Capitol Hill. Hallie Vitale will check back in with you next hour as well. Thank you. So tonight we're learning about a sort of bizarre backtrack as the Women's World Cup is set to kick off in just a few hours from now. Turns out the players may not actually get paid the money they were promised. The president of FIFA saying today he can't guarantee that the women are going to get their money, a minimum of $30,000 each, because it's actually going to the governing bodies that oversee the teams. Then they're supposed to pay it out. Look at this.
Whatever payments we do through the associations, and then the associations will, of course, make the relevant payments to their own players.
But keep in mind the context and the backdrop here, which is that incredibly high-profile fight by these women's soccer players to get paid like the men do, to get equal pay. And now there's this. This year's prize pool for the Women's World Cup, by the way, is only about a quarter of what the men got last year. Let's bring in Josh Letterman. What? The World Cup is kicking off, the Women's World Cup. I think it's overnight hours our time here in the U.S. And you have this situation where it's like, why aren't the women going to get paid? That's a huge caveat.
It's a massive caveat, Hallie. Just to back up, it was a big deal last month when FIFA announced they were going to change the way they gave out this prize money. In the past, they'd essentially handed over the prize money to each national football federation to then dole out to the players. They said, we're not going to do that. We want to guarantee that each one of these players gets that minimum $30,000. That would be for a team that's less successful, well upwards of $200,000, for example, winning teams. And so the idea was there was going to be more equity here. But now the head of FIFA says that essentially it's too complicated with the tax situation and the residency requirements for FIFA to pay out the money instead. So they are once again going to give that money to the associations. They hope those associations will then give it fairly to each of the players, but they can't guarantee it.
Josh, the Women's World Cup is happening, obviously, in Australia and New Zealand, and we're hearing reports in just the last few minutes here of some kind of an incident in New Zealand, people hurt. What do we know? Does that have anything to do with the World Cup? Can you give us any insight into that?
Yeah, this is just coming in right now. It's about 9:30 in the morning on Thursday right now in New Zealand. So they are waking up to the reports that there's been some type of what looks like it may be a mass shooting. We just spoke to the police there in Auckland. They say that 6 people are injured, 3 of them seriously, and that this incident was contained to a building there in Auckland that has been under construction. The mayor of Auckland has spoken to the New Zealand Herald saying that he believes the gunman is dead, but police have not confirmed that. For now, all they are saying is that they are responding to an incident, urging people to stay away, and that this incident was not near any of those stadiums involved in the World Cup.
That was my question, if it was close to where the World Cup activities are happening. This is a live look, by the way, at Auckland, at the location where this happened. As you say, Josh, it's about 9:30 in the morning there. We're going to stay on top of that. Josh, thank you so much for bringing us that developing news tonight. Coming up here on the show, some shocking stories from some former Northwestern football players. The abuse they claimed happened while playing for the school. And later, you might not guess how much or really how little one star says she made when her show hit streaming. Stay with us. We are hearing new details tonight from former Northwestern University football players on the hazing they say they went through from their teammates and the fear that they had to live with. Listen.
We were thrown into a culture where physical, emotional, and sexual abuse was normalized.
So we had no reference point to know if this was just a college football thing or just a uniquely Northwestern thing.
All we wanted to do was play ball, and we were subjected to sort of this culture, and we lived in fear.
We lived in fear, he says. These stories are coming after a lawsuit was filed separately by a former player, just called John Doe, talking about rituals. You see him here, something called Shrek claps. When upperclassmen on the team would run around a player who made a mistake in practice while clapping their hands above the head of the person. There was also something called the car wash. Players standing naked, spinning around the entrance to the showers so that freshman players were forced to basically rub up against them to go get into the showers. The suit claims that now fired coach Pat Fitzgerald knew about what was going on. The president of Northwestern says he cannot respond to specifics in the lawsuit, but says we must ensure, I'm quoting here, we must ensure that we have in place appropriate accountability for the athletic department. Shaq Brewster is joining us now. And I don't know if people, I don't think we showed it in the shot, but there were some big name lawyers with these former players today. Have those players filed suit? What is the expectation and what else are they saying?
Yeah, Hallie, big-name lawyers like Benjamin Crump, someone who we've become familiar with. You're looking at him on screen right now. He has not filed that lawsuit yet. His language is that that will be coming in the very immediate future. It's coming soon. But he has retained about a dozen former football players at Northwestern. He said he's conducting interviews with staff, that they're doing their own investigation to really get down to the bottom of this. And the allegations that we've heard so far, Hallie, are pretty widespread. They're saying that it's not just the football program, that it extends to baseball, softball, volleyball, even cheerleading. I want you to listen to one of the allegations that we heard and the impact that the experience that these players say they went through. Listen to the impact that it's had on them.
There was a code of silence that felt insurmountable to break. And speaking up could lead to consequences that affected playing time and can warrant further abuse. What we went through is wrong. So I say that we support you. You know, we're here. We're in this together.
So far, one lawsuit has been filed, but it is very clear, Hallie, more are to come.
What else are we hearing from Northwestern?
Well, the university is emphasizing what they've done already. They say that we really know about this because of an internal investigation that they conducted and started back in November of last year. They say that since that internal investigation that resulted in the 17-year veteran coach being fired, they have instituted new reforms. They closed down training facilities. They have new training for staff in terms of hazing and new reporting mechanisms for staff involving hazing. So they say they're taking it seriously. You read that statement from the university president in a letter to members of faculty. They're not addressing the specific allegations that have been laid out in the lawsuit and put out there in press conferences, but this is something that they will be talking about, Hallie, for months to come.
Shaq Brewster, thank you so much. I know we'll talk again in the days to come. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Wesleyan University says today it'll stop giving preference to legacy applicants, meaning people whose family members got into the school. Wesleyan is one of the top liberal arts schools in the country. They say the move is not a huge deal for them. They already weren't putting a ton of stock into the legacy thing, but they are taking this step after the Supreme Court ruled against affirmative action earlier this month. Wesleyan is just one of several top schools making this kind of move. Number 2, new research says bad gut health may be tied to bad brain health. One study found chronic constipation was linked to worse cognitive skills. 2 others even said some gut bacteria are associated with more risk of dementia. Experts say there is still a lot we don't know, but they say, hey, studying this stuff is important. It could ultimately help treat and even prevent brain decline. Number 3, Mandy Moore, the star of This Is Us, that monster, mega, massive hit, says she's gotten paychecks of less than $1 after the show started streaming on Hulu. It's part of a push, her talking about this, for fairer residuals. You know what a residual is? That's payments for actors when their shows or movies are replayed. It's part of the reason why actors are on strike right now. And it's giving some insight and some color into, the dollars and cents, emphasis on cents, behind this. No comment from Hulu, but we should note that Comcast, our parent company, is represented by the group negotiating with the actors right now. Number 4, you can now own a piece of a Major League Baseball team just by buying some stock, newly available in the Atlanta Braves. That's after a reorganization by the team's parent company. You can buy a share, meaning part ownership, for around $45 as of today's market close. How about that? Number 5, champagne sales and exports. Taking a dive this year. Producers say today it's partly because of pressure from inflation. This is after the industry saw record sales when pandemic restrictions were lifted, people toasting to that. In Alabama, they're preparing to put to death the first inmate since a series of issues carrying out other lethal injections. With that inmate speaking exclusively with NBC News tonight from prison. It's a story we first brought you as our original a couple months ago, sharing with you how the last 2 executions in Alabama failed, meaning there are 2 prisoners on death row right now there who are still alive months after their execution dates. Now, James Barber is still waiting for a decision from a federal appeals court on an effort to block his execution. But for now, he's heading into tomorrow, prepared for the end of his life. Dasha Burns has our exclusive reporting, some details of which you may find disturbing.
An Alabama death row inmate set to die this week, in his own words.
That's a situation that very few people have ever been in, right?
James Barber accepts his fate.
I don't have any experience with it, but I can tell you what God has shown me. Have no fear.
But he's expressing some hesitation about being the state's first test subject as it tries to prove it can carry out a lethal injection without incident.
Now, I have a fair amount of trepidation about the process that they've obviously haven't perfected.
The last 2 went wrong. The condemned men survived after being pierced with needles for hours as the execution team struggled to start an IV filled with a cocktail of lethal drugs. The failed attempts prompting backlash.
Justice for our family!
And a 3-month pause on executions so the state could conduct a review of its procedures. The state downplaying the failures.
Cold-blooded convicted killer complains about the prodding and poking of a small IV line. Really?
Governor Kay Ivey saying in a statement, for the sake of the victims and their families, we've got to get this right, but blaming, quote, legal tactics and criminals hijacking the system for the controversy. Now the state says it's ready.
He's the first one after they did no true review of the protocol, made no real changes.
Alabama didn't make the findings of its internal review public. The state declined to comment this week. But in a letter to Governor Ivey in February, Corrections Commissioner John Hamm saying the department hired more medical personnel, practiced its protocols, and added more equipment. That equipment, revealed in court filings, includes additional straps to secure inmates to the gurney. The state also said in court it will use a new IV team. The most significant change is that the state will have more time to attempt to execute Barber, allowing them to go through the night from 6 p.m. Thursday to 6 a.m. Friday. Previously, executions had to be completed in a single day, but the Alabama Supreme Court lifted that time limit.
I don't know what to expect, but then I know that I'm in God's hands.
Barber is convicted of the 2001 murder of 75-year-old Dorothy Epps, whom he beat to death with a hammer when he was in a drug-induced blackout, according to Barber himself and court filings. Members of Epps' family are traveling to Alabama this week for the attempted execution. At least one of them, Epps' granddaughter, has forgiven Barber, writing him a letter published in The Atlantic. "I pray that when you see Grandmama again, she embraces you and tells you it is okay. I forgive you, Jimmy. I forgive you for everything you did."
That forgiveness is just incredible. I love Sarah Gregory more than I love any person on the face of this earth.
Barber sees that forgiveness as a sign from God. He became deeply religious, reading the Bible in county jail after murdering Epps. On the eve of his scheduled execution, he says he's placing his fate in God's hands.
Look at what I did. I am so ashamed of, and I regret so much that I had to go to God. Nobody wants it, and I still think there's a lot that I can accomplish and people I can help with change hearts. If indeed it happens and I have to go, I'll go with a smile on my face. But if it doesn't happen, then I'll go on and do everything I can to honor God and do things in His name.
Our thanks to Dasha Burns for that reporting. Coming up here on the show, some wild video showing a car flying into a house, the crash, and the deadly result later in the 5 Things. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest Bureau, terrible crash out of Missouri. A 73-year-old woman who died after that moment, her car just flying into the air. It looks like it flips, slams into 2 houses. You can see it there. Police said the car seemed to be going so fast, it veered off the road, hit an embankment. People were home inside those houses when the crash happened, but there have been no other reported injuries. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a terrifying story. A guy caught hiding in the back of a woman's car in Massachusetts. She told police she was driving. She was in her car driving when a light in the car suddenly came on. She looked in her back seat, and there was a person hiding underneath a coat. She obviously got a little scared. She started swerving all over the road. The man apparently fell out of the car. Police charged him with breaking and entering. And out of our Midwest Bureau, look at the catch for a kid in Oklahoma. This bizarre-looking fish. That's a gum line, and are those human teeth? No, they're fish teeth. This is called a pacu. It's a native species to South America. It's invasive. It can mess up local ecosystems. There's the kid. His smile's as big as the fish is there. The family threw it back in the water before they figured out what it was. Officials think it was somebody's pet that got just too big, so it got thrown into the wild. No braces needed for that fish. That's a line of straight pearly whites. Still to come. Climate change threatening life on this little island off the coast of Maryland, but people are still moving in big time. They're still calling it home. They say they're willing to take the risk. Our Aaron Gilchrist goes there to figure out why so many people are paying to stay at a place that may not exist in 20 years. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's climate change, right? Because we've all heard how global warming is going to raise sea levels, potentially having a big effect on communities on the coast. For one very tiny community off the coast of Maryland called Smith Island, the threat is very real. Experts say in the next couple decades, most of the island that you're seeing here could end up unlivable. You can't live there because of the fact that the bay, the sea levels essentially, will rise up and overtake it. However, new home buyers, they are still flooding in. One person's retreat away from the flood risk, after all, seems to be another's opportunity to get a taste of Smith Island's charm. And folks there tell us it's worth the risk. Aaron Gilchrist has more.
A 15-mile choppy boat ride from Maryland's western shore. Past a shipwreck, there is a refuge in the Chesapeake Bay. Smith Island. Its fewer than 200 full-time residents carry more than 300 years of the island's unique culture. It's home to Maryland's state dessert, Smith Island layer cake, a vibrant crabbing tradition, and more recently, a swarm of home buyers.
It's been over 30 homes in 2 years.
Smith Island's jack-of-all-trades, new and only realtor Laura Evans says she's never seen anything like it.
So this is one of the listings that I've just recently received.
It's on the market for about $160,000, up 28% from the last time it sold 17 years ago. Compared to the mainland, the homes offer a bargain for those seeking a slower lifestyle.
I think that the attraction is people just want to escape.
All the new home buyers may seem peculiar because scientists project global warming will plunge Smith Island almost entirely underwater with just 1 foot of sea level rise by 2050. New home buyers on the island, though, will tell you that there is something special about Smith Island that makes them want to stay.
I've never had neighbors like it, people who just open their arms to welcome us here.
Paul and Samantha Brillinger bought a fixer-upper for $80,000 in March. They say rising sea levels are a common issue for anybody living on the coast.
We're more concerned our sailboat sinking than we are the island. I don't think we're going to be around when the island sunk.
While environmental issues have forced insurers to pull out of states like California and Florida, Paul and Samantha say they had no trouble getting home and flood insurance for about $2,800 a year. For generations, residents here have found ways to cope with a bay that has reclaimed more than 3,000 acres of the island in the past 150 years.
They're the canary in the coal mine when it comes to climate change and sea level rise in Chesapeake Bay.
Back on Maryland's eastern shore,
what was solid land here is falling straight in the water, and that's like 6 feet down.
Professor Bill Dennison says climate change is already fueling erosion and shore loss across the Chesapeake. In 2013, after damage from Hurricane Sandy, the state of Maryland offered a home buyout program to Smith Island residents, sparking a backlash.
We're not going anywhere. We're here to stay.
Crabber Mark Kitching has lived on the island his whole life.
We started seeking funding through, whatever agencies were available to us.
Since then, Smith Island has received millions of government dollars for new elevated roads, a sewer plant, a jetty, and dock repairs. And now the state's buyback program is history. Still, some on the island harbor climate skepticism. To the folks who say in another 30 years, 50 years, Smith Island won't be inhabitable, what do you say to those people?
I think their numbers is skewed.
For Smith Islanders old and new, the future has always been uncertain. They say what's important is preserving their little slice of heaven on earth and the rock-solid community that comes with it.
Aaron Gilchrist is joining us now. It is fascinating, Aaron, as a former resident of Delmarva. I know Smith Island. You know Smith Island. You've been there now, I think, multiple times. I think people can maybe understand people who live there already who don't want to leave. But the idea of people knowing that Smith Island is already fighting against what many see as inevitable and still deciding to move there anyway.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head-scratcher, right? I mean, FEMA says that Smith Island and Tangier Island and other places along the East Coast are at a relatively moderate risk of coastal flooding. Same goes for places like Miami, New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia at a higher risk. And yet you have people, in this case, who are willing to go and play the odds, and they believe that the odds are in their favor when it comes to Smith Island and Tangier Island in Virginia. Those folks believe that they are going to be okay in the time that they'll be there, living there, and they're not too worried about what may come decades down the road for them, they say.
You have to think the housing cost, too, is probably part of the appeal. Aaron Gilchrist, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great reporting. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now. We're coming on the air with a dangerous tornado ripping through a town in North Carolina, pulling the roof off of a medical plant, knocking over houses. As in Kentucky, the governor is declaring a state of emergency because of this, all this flash flooding. We're live with where these storms are headed next. Also new tonight, former President Trump's taken a pass on a chance to testify in front of a grand jury, with our sources giving us an idea about the new federal charges he could face. Plus, just breaking in the last hour, police in New Zealand say 2 people are dead after a shooting in the capital city of Auckland just hours before the Women's World Cup kicks off there. We'll talk about what we know right now. Plus, on Capitol Hill, 2 IRS whistleblowers accusing prosecutors of taking steps to slow walk an investigation into President Biden's son. What happens now as Republicans try to turn up the pressure on Hunter Biden? And former football players at Northwestern saying all they wanted to do was play ball. Instead, they say they lived in fear. Legal action, maybe the next step after these allegations of hazing. We've got that later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight at least 4 people have been hurt after an EF2 tornado ripped through a town in North Carolina. Take a look at some of the damage here. You have trees that are obviously fallen over, but the real concern is houses, buildings like this one. Look, you can see looks to be the walls just ripped off, the roof just come off on that house. There's a Pfizer plant. This is what you're looking at here in the area. The roof is totally gone. We don't know how bad the damage was inside or what may have been compromised. This is a tornado that came rolling into Nash County, just east of Raleigh, with some lightning, some winds up to 135 miles an hour. Look at this, how ominous the sky looks. Debris flying around with that sky getting darker and darker. This tornado is just part of the wave of dangerous weather, putting 10 million people at risk tonight, with maybe the potential for more tornadoes, strong winds, maybe some big hail. It's the latest round of extreme weather after one Kentucky town is starting to clean up after this. Flash flooding, putting neighborhoods almost underwater. Look, you can barely see the front doors. Those houses, those cars look like they're sitting in a lake, not on streets. The city saw almost a foot of rain in Mayfield pouring down in the last 24 hours. That could be a new state record, with the flooding now leaving some people unsure of what they're going to do.
We're not rich by far. We work full-time jobs and all of our stuff got taken. Like, it's ruined. And we don't have renter's insurance. You know, it sucks.
About 30% of people in Mayfield are under the poverty line. That's about 2.5 times the national average. And if you're thinking, Hallie, Mayfield sounds familiar. Why do I know the town of Mayfield? It's because back in December of 2021, not even 2 years ago, it was in the bullseye of an EF4 tornado that just devastated that town. It killed something like 80 people in the area. It was heartbreaking for so many, and a gut punch to see another round of extreme weather affecting people's lives. On top of all this comes the extreme heat that has nearly 80 million of us under alerts tonight. Blaine Alexander has more. Blaine, you've got the heat, you've got the air quality issues, and now this other round of flooding and tornadoes. Talk it through it.
You know, Hallie, this really is unfortunately almost becoming the theme of the summer, this extreme weather that checks almost every box, every single category. So let's start with the heat. Right here in Atlanta, we've seen unprecedentedly hot temperatures, but really that's what we've seen all across the South. Millions of people for days now have been in the path of this heat dome. You know, further out west, we're seeing places that are hitting triple-digit highs. So, of course, when we talk about this type of weather, we're not talking about just uncomfortable, but we're talking about heat that's just downright dangerous. So that's one box that we're talking about, that extreme heat. Now, let's talk about the rain. We've seen it around the country. We've seen it in the Northeast. Now it's focused on Kentucky. In fact, Governor Beshear there has declared a state of emergency after we saw that extreme flash flooding there in Kentucky near Mayfield. Now, what's really unbelievable about this, Hallie, is that that particular county broke a daily record for rainfall. In fact, they got more than 11 inches of rain over a 24-hour period. That's just unbelievable. And then when you look at those aerial pictures right there, it's unbelievable because you're right. Back in December of 2021, we saw the same area. In fact, some parts of Mayfield, believe it or not, are still cleaning up from that tornado back then. Now they have to deal with this disaster on top of a still existing disaster. So that's Kentucky. And then if you go just a little bit to the southeast, down in North Carolina, we can talk about that tornado. That's something that just ripped through this afternoon. You see the images there of that Pfizer facility. Now, we're getting reports that there is heavy damage inside, that some of the medicine, of course, that's stored inside could have been heavily damaged as well. But it's not just that Pfizer facility. We've seen pictures coming out of there of homes that have been devastated. Emergency officials earlier today were urging everybody in the area to stay off the roads. They say that the roads are damaged. They had to close the interstate there for quite some time, so you can imagine just traffic backed up for quite a way. This is really just a snapshot of some of the extreme weather, Hallie, that we're seeing. Now, remember, we're officially hitting 4 weeks of summer today, and this is becoming, again, quite a trademark of what we've seen throughout the summer. And back here in Atlanta with the heat, that's showing no sign of cooling down as well. Many people are still trying to search for some relief, Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, thank you so much for that rundown. I want to get to meteorologist Bill Cairns now, who's got more on all of this. So where is the risk of more storms tonight? And do we know anything else about that tornado that ripped through Nash County?
Well, the one thing the Weather Service is saying is they went to the beginning where it started, the Dorchester area, and they're saying that they immediately found what they call EF2 damage with winds of 135 miles per hour. But that's just so far. Down to the rest of tonight and then tomorrow, they'll go the rest of the 20-mile path, and they'll see if there's anything higher than that. I wouldn't doubt if this jumps up probably to an EF3. The scale, by the way, goes EF0 to EF5. 5 is extremely rare. We haven't had any in years. But this is probably going to end up being a high-end EF2 or an EF3. To the rest of the severe weather, we still have strong thunderstorms heading out here towards the Outer Banks. Isolated strong storm just to the east of the Fayetteville area. So this tornado watch will be expiring shortly. We haven't had any other tornadoes since that one big one. And the rest of the risk this evening will take us from Minneapolis to Sioux City, north of Omaha, back through areas of the Central Plains, Nebraska, and a little slice here of Oklahoma, Kansas, and also there in Colorado. Isolated strong storms, large hail. And then tomorrow, we actually have a huge population risk in the slight risk, 41 million people, mostly because we're talking about Detroit, Cleveland, Columbus, Indianapolis, Lexington, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh up to Erie, and then a little area here around western Kansas where we could get some even stronger storms, isolated tornadoes tomorrow. And how about the rainfall situation? I mean, this was just historic overnight. We've never seen rainfall like this in Kentucky before. We do think that this will be confirmed as the new state record for the most rain ever in 24 hours. And we really did it in about 6 to 10 hours. And most of that even fell within about 3 to 4 hours. The old record was 10.5 inches. We're about 3 1/4 inches here in the Mayfield area. You just got to feel horrible for everyone in Mayfield. 57 people in the town died 19 months ago in that EF4 tornado. And now just so many homes got water in them. So it's just misery on top of misery. And we do have a flash flood watch that does include the Mayfield area. Now it includes areas of Kentucky and northern portions of Tennessee, including the Nashville area. So they do have additional chances of rainfall. I mean, hopefully nothing like yesterday. And as far as the heat goes, well, 111 in Little Rock. We're about at the peak of our heat. And everyone wants to know. Every day we show you these numbers. When is it going to end? This is the 6 to 10 day outlook towards the end of July. Look at this huge bullseye covering much of the. Yeah, this is not pretty. And it's no end in sight.
It's going to have to break soon, right? I mean, like, can you just give me, like, I know we don't have much time, but it's if it's a dome baking the U.S., how does it move on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the weather pattern that gets it out of here?
Oh, you need me to start saying that the heat is going to build on the East Coast, and we're going to get like a heat wave on the East Coast, and we haven't had that. Sometimes maybe if you've watched weather reports, they'll say, oh, the Bermuda high is really strong, and that's when the East Coast gets its heat waves. Notice we haven't talked, Hallie, at all about East Coast heat waves. It's all about out in the West because that's where the heat dome is, and that's where it's going to stay. I mean, the dangerous heat is just, it's just... There's no break, and there's no end in sight to the wet weather in the Northeast. Don't be surprised in the next 2 to 3 weeks we talk more about flash flooding issues in the Northeast because this weather pattern is stuck.
It is disturbing. Bill Cairns, thanks for being on top of it. Appreciate it. So listen, in just the last couple of hours, we're learning that former President Trump is essentially saying, hey, thanks, but no thanks to the offer by the special counsel to have him come in and testify in front of a grand jury in D.C., as we're getting now a clearer picture of the charges he could face, of the scope of the investigation against him. Remember, we know this investigation is against him here because he is a target of it, right? He got that target letter. He told us that he did, which means he almost certainly is going to end up charged with crimes. There will be some kind of an indictment. Typically, that's what we see when somebody gets a target letter against him. So what is he going to get charged with? What do we know? 2 attorneys familiar with this letter tell our team tonight that it talks about 3 possible charges. First, depriving somebody of their rights, maybe voting rights. We don't know if it's against one person, a bunch of people, etc. Number 2, conspiracy to defraud the United States. And number 3, tampering with a witness, something we know former Vice President Mike Pence faced some questions about. Vaughn Hilliard is joining us now. To be clear, Vaughn, that graphic we just showed, that is not the end-all, be-all, right? That is an indication of a potential roadmap that the special counsel could be following. We could see other charges. We could see things that are not those charges. But the bottom line is they are serious charges.
Correct. I mean, this could happen as soon as next week. It could be weeks from now. It couldn't happen at all. This is an opportunity for Donald Trump to go forward before that grand jury. Clearly, we're told that he has no plans to travel to Washington, D.C. this week. But you can look what he's up against there in the prison sentences of those potential charges here. That is why politically for Donald Trump, so much of this is important because, well, he over the last year has suggested that he, if he were to get back in the White House, would pardon a vast majority reality of January 6 defendants. He's looking at a reality that if he were to be charged and found guilty, that he would be one of those. And that is where this is more than about, just taking back the White House. It could be potentially his own freedom from prison time. I want to let you listen to a little bit of the former president last night in Iowa. Take a listen.
It bothers me. It bothers me for everybody in this incredible sold-out audience, and it bothers you. It's election interference. Never been done like this in the history of our country, and it's a disgrace.
That is where Trump is making this about the greater MAGA movement, Hallie. This, for him, is laying down the stakes for the folks there, those thousands of folks who are in the crowd, that they are trying to put behind bars the leader of the MAGA movement, the conservative movement, the Republican Party today. Those are the stakes that he's trying to lay out for the vast majority of the Republican electorate.
There's also the reaction, as you've alluded to, Vaughn, from Donald Trump, but also from his allies in Congress, his allies more broadly in the Republican Party, with sources telling our team that he had these kind of like strategy sessions with a couple of top House Republicans, essentially looking to get that messaging in line about a potential indictment. In just the last, I think, 45 minutes, not even, we're hearing from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who says, yeah, a call happened, but it wasn't like that. Let me play it.
It wasn't no strategy session, possible indictment. I think the strategy sessions happen in the Democrats' Department of Justice, where they go after anybody who's running against the president.
The hardest part for them, Hallie, to strategize on is the reality that Donald Trump doesn't deny so many of his actions from that day in the lead up to the January 6th attack. Instead, it's really going to be on Kevin McCarthy and other Republicans to challenge the merits of the special counsel's prosecution.
Vaughn Hilliard following every twist and turn. Thank you, Vaughn. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
We've got some new details tonight out of Alabama in the case of a woman who went missing there for 2 days, with police now sharing what Carly Russell's online searches looked like in the days and hours leading up to her disappearance, with her apparently searching things like, do you have to pay for Amber Alert? How to take money from a register without getting caught? A one-way ticket out of Birmingham, the movie Taken, and more, leaving all of us with one big question. Where exactly did Carly Russell go after she called officials about a child walking down an interstate? Right now, police say there's no indication a crime has been committed. Listen.
We pretty much know exactly what took place from the time she left work until she got on the 911 call, and we can see getting out of the car on the interstate from that footage. And after that, I think she only knows. We don't know.
Russell's family says right now they have no response to what police have now shared. I want to bring in Sam Brock, who's live for us in Hoover, who is joining us now. So, Sam, what Russell describes, according to her family, that happened was horrific, that she went through something terrible in those 48 hours. These online searches that police have described would seem to paint a very different picture. What's the reality? Do we know, and will we know?
So we don't know. The police doesn't know, Hallie. Obviously, they're mystified by what happened, but they did assure the public that there's no risk to public safety. You would think if they really thought there was an abductor or possible kidnapper out there, they would not use those words, and they did. Let's talk a little bit about what Carly's version of events was and then parse that out. She says she was on the Interstate 459 and that she got out of the car to look at this toddler, 3 to 4 years old. She said in the 911 call, a white shirt on with potentially a diaper, and that a man started to mumble he was going to try to help the child as well, came over into the highway, took her, grabbed her, pulled her over the fence, and brought Carly into first a car and then an 18-wheeler. She says she was able to escape the 18-wheeler, but then got abducted again by a man and a woman, ended up in a house where she was blindfolded but not cuffed and made to strip out of all of her clothes, although she says there was no sexual misconduct, and ultimately was able to break free the next day. That is her version of events. Now, the police chief says, let's just start with the reported toddler, for example, that they geo-tracked her phone and that she ended up going about 600 yards while on the phone with 911, which is to say 6 football fields long. She was traveling. He said no toddler would be able to travel that distance under any circumstances, really, but certainly in the minute or minute and a half that they were on the phone with 911. So he's immediately poking holes at what Carly was saying. You talked about some of those searches as well that were revealed earlier today, like, do I have to pay for an Amber Alert? Looking up Taken, which is a movie about an abduction. Now, when will police actually talk to Carly again? So far, it's only been that initial review when she first went to the hospital. Here's what the police chief said just hours ago.
I think our detectives have talked to the parents, and we're ready to talk as soon as she's ready. So, you know, if she called right now, we're ready.
She was found, or I should say returned home, with a cut on her lip, officials say a tear in her shirt, and $107 in one of her socks, Hallie.
So what happens next, Sam, right? Because police say, and I think it's important to note that they say there's no indication that mental illness is a factor here. There are still a lot of questions. Are they, I know it's hard to say, are they going to get answers? But it's like, are they going to at least try to get those answers? It sounds like they will.
Right, a ton of questions. So what we learned in the press conference was they feel like her cell phone still needs to be sort of extensively searched, even though we know she didn't have it on her with wherever she went, right? So they're still trying to use that as a source of information, but you would have to imagine conversations going on with her friends and with her colleagues to find out how she was feeling at the time that this all happened, Hallie.
Sam Brock, live for us in Hoover. Thank you. 2 people are dead in a shooting. The attacker is also dead. Others are seriously hurt after this happened in Auckland just hours before the Women's World Cup starts there. We want to show you now a live look outside the building where the shooting apparently happened. You can see a few people have gathered there. We're just learning in the last few minutes that the U.S. women's team says all members of the team are safe and accounted for. I want to go right to Josh Letterman. Josh, tell us more about what we know, the location where this happened, and anything else you can find out tonight.
Well, Hallie, we're finding out the first details about how this incident went down. It started at about 7:20 in the morning in New Zealand, where it's now Thursday morning, where police say that this suspect walked into the building and opened fire and then moved throughout the building to the upper floors of this building, which, again, is under construction. He continued to shoot, and when police responded, they found him barricaded inside of an elevator shaft. Police say that they tried to engage with the suspect, but he just kept shooting, and a short time later, they found him dead. Now, police have not said at this point whether it was a police officer who shot him or whether possibly this individual shot himself, but we do know that the police say that they do not see this currently posing a national security risk. They say this was an isolated incident, and in fact, this building was not anywhere near any of the stadiums that were involved in the Women's World Cup, which is set to kick off tomorrow. And so at this point, there's no indication that this is tied to that sporting event, but certainly this is bringing back a lot of painful memories for people in New Zealand from just back about 4 years ago when they had that massive, horrendous mass shooting in Christchurch that killed 51 people at a mosque. In the wake of that incident, New Zealand really stepped up their gun control, banned semi-automatics, and a whole host of other steps. And so this is one indication that this gun violence problem still continuing to affect New Zealand as well.
Josh Letterman, thank you for the updates. I know you'll stay on top of it. Thank you. Tonight, the State Department is in talks with South Korea and with Sweden to try to figure out what to do about this U.S. soldier who's now in custody in North Korea after he apparently sprinted across the border to get there. Listen.
We're still gathering facts, and I want to be very clear that the administration has and will continue to actively work to ensure his safety and return him home to his family.
So, very murky story here. This is Private Second Class Travis King, and a New Zealand tourist today is telling our team that she was on this private tour with him of the DMZ, a tour that he apparently kind of slipped into, when she watched him take off super fast towards the border with North Korea, crossing that line, running so fast that apparently officials couldn't stop him.
My initial thought was like, oh my God, he's obviously doing that as a TikTok stunt, and that's the stupidest thing you could ever do. Then he just didn't stop, and then the soldiers reacted and chased after him.
She shared this picture where you can apparently see the back of King's head, we circled there, as he's standing with her tour group. NBC News has not been able to independently confirm that that is him. U.S. officials speaking anonymously with the Associated Press say King had been serving time in prison in South Korea on assault charges. He was released last week. He was on his way home when he kind of slipped in, blended in with a group of tourists who were heading for a tour of the demilitarized zone, the DMZ, which separates North from South Korea. Keir Simmons is joining us now. So, negotiations with a country that we don't really negotiate with? Like, how does that even work? How long could it take? What's your sense, and where's our reporting on this?
Well, the negotiations could take a long time, or they could happen quickly. The U.S. has negotiated with North Korea, of course, most famously with President Trump, and those famous images of President Trump on that border, standing there, meeting with Kim Jong-un. But things have changed a lot since then. They've been in the deep freeze. You know, Hallie, take a listen to how the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations frames the challenge here.
We have made an effort to engage diplomatically with this government. They've not accepted, but it's not for lack of trying on our side.
Now, you know, apart from the question of how on earth he was able to run across that border and not get shot, bluntly, there's one other thing I've been thinking about, Hallie, which is just that, as you know, I've been to North Korea. I've been to that border on the south side, right? Now, you have to fly via Beijing to go to North Korea. You can't just cross over in a normal, any one of us normally. The change in the world that he will be experiencing, I can't even describe how different it is to be in the south and be in the north. It's like a throwback. I mean, it's communism. It's a completely different world. So, you know, you can imagine what he's experiencing right now. It'll be something.
There's also, I mean, you're talking, and I think it's so fascinating here on kind of the very micro level, what this experience is going to be like for him as the U.S. is trying to get him home. There's also the macro level, the kind of geopolitical angle here, because North Korea is launching a couple of short-range ballistic missiles into the ocean, right? Into the sea. Fair to say that probably doesn't help the situation here. Like, there are still pieces of this that are moving around beyond simply this U.S. soldier.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, sometimes in history, strange things happen and they can impact history, or sometimes they don't, right? The big picture is the continuing desire by Kim Jong-un to strengthen, if you like, his nuclear capability, because he believes that is the way to protect North Korea and make him more powerful on the Korean peninsula. That attempt to stop him from doing that has really not worked. It's gone nowhere. And basically now North Korea is a nuclear country and is continuing to fire these missiles. By the way, the ballistic missiles that were fired in the last 24, 48 hours, they aren't the intercontinental ballistic missiles that North Korea has also been testing that may have the capability to reach the continental United States. As I mentioned the last hour, Hallie, you know, we haven't been talking about this, but it's still there. The tension is still there. An interesting question is, as these talks play out over this one soldier, what impact will that have? Maybe, just maybe, it gets the two sides talking. I doubt it, but, you know, will it have some kind of an impact on the geopolitical picture?
Here's one thing I can say, Keir. We're going to be talking about this again, of that I am sure. Keir Simmons, thank you, friend. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Right now, back here in Washington, over on Capitol Hill, it is a late evening hearing as a pair of IRS whistleblowers are sounding the alarm, suggesting that the Justice Department may have tried to slow walk its investigation of Hunter Biden. Watch.
Prosecutors did not appear to follow the normal investigative process.
At every stage, decisions were made that benefited the subject of this investigation.
So these whistleblowers are testifying to a Republican-led House panel with claims that the DOJ essentially mishandled the investigation into Hunter Biden, the president's son, and let him off easy. You're looking at live pictures. It is, just for your reference, 6:30 almost Eastern time here in D.C. This thing is stretching into, I think it's 6th hour at this point. Remember, Hunter Biden got a plea deal earlier this month. He pleaded guilty to a couple of federal misdemeanors for failing to pay his taxes properly. He also faces a separate felony gun possession charge that will probably be dismissed if he meets certain conditions. The Biden administration telling our team in a statement that House Republicans are, in their words, staging partisan stunts to try to damage the president politically. I want to bring in Hallie on Capitol Hill. This is a lengthy one, Hallie, right? These whistleblowers have been speaking for quite a while. Bring us up to speed on the key takeaways here. And I don't want to live in the weeds, but top lines here, it feels like they're saying they are not comfortable with the way that this investigation was handled. And one of these whistleblowers, we didn't know who he was until today, is saying, I'm not a Republican. He's going, I'm a Democrat. He's trying to make the case that this isn't about politics.
Yes, he's trying to say that he's the least likely, because he's a Democrat, to go after the former president's son for political reasons. Of course, nevertheless, that is what Democrats are alleging here as we listen to these so-called whistleblowers continue to testify for well over the 5th hour, in part because this was always going to be a lengthy hearing, but also because this is what happens when you start hearings at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, as opposed to typically around 10 a.m. when you usually would start them. But of course, we had the Israeli president here today, and so that was why they had to start a little bit later. Nevertheless, while the timing was a little unpredictable, the talking points and what we've heard both from members of Congress on the right and left, but also from these witnesses, has not exactly been surprising. We had a sense of what they were going to say, specifically the fact that these witnesses continue pointing to the idea that based on what they say they saw, this was an example of Hunter Biden getting a sweetheart deal and getting effectively the DOJ playing softball with him because of who he is. Listen to how one of those witnesses put it.
It appeared to me, based on what I experienced, that the U.S. attorney in Delaware in our investigation was constantly hamstrung, limited, and marginalized by DOJ officials as well as other U.S. attorneys.
Now, you'll notice there, Hallie, he uses the word hamstrung, but I think it's important to point out, and Democrats on the committee have done this repeatedly over the course of the day, to say that the attorney at the center of this, who was Trump appointed and began his investigation during the Trump years, said repeatedly that he was not hamstrung or stymied or limited in the scope of what he was able to investigate. He was able to subpoena the people he wanted to subpoena. And so, again, it does cut against what these witnesses and Republicans are saying during this hearing.
What else are Democrats trying to frame this as? Allie, talk to us kind of about the piece of the other side of the aisle.
Politics. I mean, listen to how Jamie Raskin put it.
Their frustrations and disagreements with their supervisors, as well as with Mr. Weiss and his team of prosecutors. The key point, Mr. Chairman, that America needs to understand is that the only political interference at play here is coming from Donald Trump and my Republican colleagues.
And so, of course, what Raskin is touching on there, Hallie, is the fact that these Hunter Biden investigations are in some ways seen, especially by Democrats, as a sort of counter probe, as the former President Trump is in the crosshairs in multiple different legal forums, both at DOJ proper on the federal level, of course, the Manhattan District Attorney, and then, of course, we're waiting to see what happens in Fulton County, Georgia. As Trump is going through those trials, literally, and tribulations, this is the Republican counter messaging, effectively trying to muddy the waters to show that it's not just Trump who could have investigations. It's also against the current president, Joe Biden, and specifically his son, Hunter. Again, despite the fact that in this specific instance, as they're looking at this sweetheart deal, which is what Republicans call it, the attorneys at the center of it have kind of knocked that central premise down.
Allie Vitale, live for us on Capitol Hill tonight. Allie, thanks. Still to come, the president of Stanford University stepping down. We'll tell you about the investigation that cost him his job and is raising a lot of questions about Stanford's research. And an NBC News exclusive. A man who could be executed in Alabama as soon as tomorrow tells our team why he's afraid the state won't be able to do it properly. Stay with us. New details tonight from former Northwestern football players on the hazing they say they went through from their teammates and the fear that they had to live with.
We were thrown into a culture where physical, emotional, and sexual abuse was normalized.
So we had no reference point to know if this was just a college football thing or just a uniquely Northwestern thing.
All we wanted to do was play ball, and we were subjected to sort of this culture. And we lived in fear.
These stories, living in fear, coming after a lawsuit filed separately by a former player only named as John Doe, talking about rituals like the Shrek claps, that's the one on top, when apparently upperclassmen on the team would run around a player who messed up in practice while clapping their hands above his head. And the car wash, that's what it's called, a quote-unquote tradition where players stood around naked. They were spinning around the entrance to the showers so that freshman players were forced to rub up against them. The suit claims that now-fired coach Pat Fitzgerald knew about what was going on. The president of Northwestern says he cannot respond to specifics in the lawsuit, but says we must ensure that we have in place appropriate accountability for the athletic department. Shaq Brewster joins us now. Shaq, where does this go next, and what else are we hearing from the school?
Well, this goes to more lawsuits, Hallie, and more lawsuits coming from big names. We're talking about people like Ben Crump, who is known for getting big settlements, usually in civil rights cases. But this time around, you're hearing lawyers and in that lawsuit really make some really big allegations, saying that it's not just about what you heard in that football program, but saying that that extends to other programs at the school. But when we did hear from those football players, they explained a little bit of why they're speaking out now, and that's what I want you to hear from them now.
There was a code of silence that felt insurmountable to break, and speaking up could lead to consequences that affected playing time and can warrant further abuse.
What we went through is wrong, so I say that we support you. You know, we're here, we're in this together.
They want to hear more stories. They want more former players to speak out. Meanwhile, the university, Hallie, is again saying that they're not responding to these lawsuits and the allegations made in the lawsuit. They're talking about changes they have made since they launched an internal investigation last fall. Changes involving more hazing training, changes involving finding a better way, improving ways where students can report any updates or any allegations of hazing. But I think the bottom line here, Hallie, is that there are one lawsuit has been filed. There are more lawsuits to come, and this is something this university is going to be dealing with for some time.
Well, and the suit describes this actions, they say, is going back as long ago as like 2014, talking about issues involving hazing and bullying that take on a sexual or racist tone. We also know that Northwestern is not the only big football school that has faced allegations like this.
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about this before. Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State. It's a lot of schools that have been dealing with this. Usually in those programs, you're talking about it in the context of fraternities and sororities. But in talking about sexual harassment or sexual abuse, this is a problem with many big institutions. There was actually a study that came out about 2 years ago in 2021 where it found that athletes were 2.5 times more likely to say they encountered sexual abuse or harassment. That was something that was brought on and mentioned by attorneys today, and it's a problem that they're hoping that this helps address.
Shaq Brewster, thank you very much. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Stanford University's president says today he will resign after a review of his past research as a neuroscientist found some big flaws. He said he was cleared of any fraud, but that he'll step down next month for the good of the school. Number 2, if you've gotten COVID but didn't get sick, it might be because of your genes. Researchers found that people with a certain genetic variation might be less likely to have COVID symptoms, even if they do have the virus. Number 3, superstar Mandy Moore of This Is Us fame says she's gotten paychecks of less than $1 after the show started streaming on Hulu. She's sharing that now as part of this push for residuals that are more fair. Residuals that's like the money that actors get when their show is re-aired or their movie is replayed. It's part of the reason why actors are striking. No comment from Hulu yet. We should note Comcast, our parent company, is represented by the group negotiating with the actors right now. Number 4, the cost of a ride on the country's busiest transit system is about to get a little more expensive. New York City is going to raise the price for the bus and subway to $2.90, up from $2.75. First hike in 8 years. Transit systems all across the country have been having a tough time getting back to pre-pandemic levels. This rate hike in New York will go into effect next month. Number 5, careful. There's set to be a drop, apparently, in the sales of champagne and the exports of champagne. Producers say today that's partly because of the pressure from inflation. That's after the industry saw record sales when pandemic restrictions were lifted. Everybody toasting to the end of them, apparently. In Alabama, they're preparing to put to death the first inmate since a series of issues carrying out other lethal injections. With that inmate speaking exclusively with NBC News tonight from prison. It's a story we first brought you as our original a couple months ago, sharing with you how the last 2 executions in Alabama failed, meaning there are 2 prisoners on death row right now who are still alive months after their execution dates. James Barber now is waiting on a decision from a federal appeals court on an effort to block his execution. But at the moment, he is heading into tomorrow prepared for the end of his life. Dasha Burns has our exclusive reporting, some details of which you may find disturbing.
An Alabama death row inmate set to die this week, in his own words.
That's a situation that very few people have ever been in, right?
James Barber accepts his fate.
I don't have any experience with it, but I can tell you what God has shown me. Have no fear.
But he's expressing some hesitation about being the state's first test subject as it tries to prove it can carry out a lethal injection without incident.
Now, I have a fair amount of trepidation about the process that they've obviously haven't perfected.
The last two went wrong. The condemned men survived after being pierced with needles for hours as the execution team struggled to start an IV filled with a cocktail of lethal drugs. The failed attempts prompting backlash.
Justice for our family!
And a 3-month pause on executions so the state could conduct a review of its procedures. The state downplaying the failures.
Cold-blooded convicted killer complains about the prodding and poking of a small IV line. Really?
Governor Kay Ivey saying in a statement, for the sake of the victims and their families, we've got to get this right, but blaming, quote, legal tactics and criminals hijacking the system for the controversy. Now the state says it's ready.
Be the first one after they did no true review of the protocol, made no real changes.
Alabama didn't make the findings of its internal review public. The state declined to comment this week. But in a letter to Governor Ivey in February, Corrections Commissioner John Hamm saying the department hired more medical personnel, practiced its protocols, and added more equipment. That equipment, revealed in court filings, includes additional straps to secure inmates to the gurney. The state also said in court it will use a new IV team. The most significant change is that the state will have more time to attempt to execute Barber, allowing them to go through the night from 6 p.m. Thursday to 6 a.m. Friday. Previously, executions had to be completed in a single day, but the Alabama Supreme Court lifted that time limit.
I don't know what to expect, but then I know that I'm in God's hands.
Barber is convicted of the 2001 murder of 75-year-old Dorothy Epps, whom he beat to death with a hammer when he was in a drug-induced blackout, according to Barber himself and court filings. Members of Epps' family are traveling to Alabama this week for the attempted execution. At least one of them, Epps' granddaughter, has forgiven Barber, writing him a letter published in The Atlantic. I pray that when you see Grandmama again, she embraces you and tells you it is okay. I forgive you, Jimmy. I forgive you for everything you did.
That forgiveness is incredible. I love Sarah Gregory more than I love any person on the face of this earth.
Barber sees that forgiveness as a sign from God. He became deeply religious, reading the Bible in county jail after murdering Epps. On the eve of his scheduled execution, he says he's placing his fate in God's hands.
Look at what I did. I am so ashamed of, and I regret so much that I had to go to God. Nobody wants to die. I still think there's a lot that I can accomplish and people I can help change hearts. If indeed it happens and I have to go, I'll go with a smile on my face. But if it doesn't happen, then I'll go on and do everything I can to honor God and do things in His name.
Dasha Burns, NBC News.
Still to come here on the show, much more to get to, including one country trying to fight crime by putting convicted gang leaders on an island. We'll explain in the Global. Here's some of what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Ukraine, officials say Russia has launched another huge airstrike on the port city of Odessa. One describing the night as hellish. The city is one of Ukraine's main ports for exporting grain. The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, says they're working to try to keep exports running as normal. Number two, Honduras is planning to build a controversial island prison colony. It would be the only one in the Western Hemisphere. It would hold 2,000 gang leaders about 150 miles off the Honduran coast. Officials hope it would help crack down on gang operations. And out of China, somewhat of a mystery surrounding the country's foreign minister. Nobody's seen him in like 3 weeks publicly. And it seems like he's missed a bunch of recent high-level talks with the U.S. and China, like when Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and climate envoy John Kerry went there this month. Lots of speculation about all this, but so far that's all it is, speculation. No firm details on why he's been gone. Still ahead in the original, one charming East Coast community could end up wiped off the map, so to speak, by climate change. Why some home buyers are moving in anyway, willing to take the risk. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight it's people moving into one charming community, even with experts predicting it could be gone, practically underwater in the next few decades. It's all about how climate change, global warming, could raise sea levels and affect communities on the coast, like this particular one, Smith Island, off the coast of Maryland. Sea level change is affecting potentially what that life could look like 30, 40, 50 years from now, but still a hot real estate market. Aaron Gilchrist explains.
A 15-mile choppy boat ride from Maryland's western shore. Past a shipwreck, there is a refuge in the Chesapeake Bay, Smith Island. Its fewer than 200 full-time residents carry more than 300 years of the island's unique culture. It's home to Maryland's state dessert, Smith Island layer cake, a vibrant crabbing tradition, and more recently, a swarm of home buyers.
It's been over 30 homes in 2 years.
Smith Island's jack-of-all-trades, new and only realtor Laura Evans says she's never seen anything like it.
So this is one of the listings that I've just recently received.
It's on the market for about $160,000, up 28% from the last time it sold 17 years ago. Compared to the mainland, the homes offer a bargain for those seeking a slower lifestyle.
I think that the attraction is people just want to escape.
All the new home buyers may seem peculiar because scientists project global warming will plunge Smith Island almost entirely underwater with just 1 foot of sea level rise by 2050. New home buyers on the island, though, will tell you that there is something special about Smith Island that makes them want to stay.
I've never had neighbors like it, people who just open their arms to welcome us here.
Paul and Samantha Brillinger bought a fixer-upper for $80,000 in March. They say rising sea levels are a common issue for anybody living on the coast.
We're more concerned our sailboat sinking than we are the island. I don't think we're going to be around when the island sunk.
While environmental issues have forced insurers to pull out of states like California and Florida, Paul and Samantha say they had no trouble getting home and flood insurance for about $2,800 a year. For generations, residents here have found ways to cope with a bay that has reclaimed more than 3,000 acres of the island in the past 150 years.
They're the canary in the coal mine when it comes to climate change and sea level rise in Chesapeake Bay.
Back on Maryland's eastern shore,
what was solid land here is falling straight in the water, and that's like 6 feet down.
Professor Bill Dennison says climate change is already fueling erosion and shore loss across the Chesapeake. In 2013, after damage from Hurricane Sandy, the state of Maryland offered a home buyout program to Smith Island residents, sparking a backlash.
We're not going anywhere. We're here to stay.
Crabber Mark Kitching has lived on the island his whole life.
We started seeking funding through, whatever agencies were available to us.
Since then, Smith Island has received millions of government dollars for new elevated roads, a sewer plant, a jetty, and dock repairs. And now the state's buyback program is history. Still, some on the island harbor climate skepticism. To the folks who say in another 30 years, 50 years, Smith Island won't be inhabitable, what do you say to those people?
I think their numbers is skewed.
For Smith Islanders old and new, the future has always been uncertain. They say what's important is preserving their little slice of heaven on earth and the rock-solid community that comes with it.
Aaron Gilchrist is joining us now. It is fascinating, Aaron, as a former resident of Delmarva. I know Smith Island. You know Smith Island. You've been there now, I think, multiple times. I think people can maybe understand people who live there already who don't want to leave. But the idea of people knowing that Smith Island is already fighting against what many see as inevitable and still deciding to move there anyway.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head-scratcher, right? I mean, FEMA says that Smith Island and Tangier Island and other places along the East Coast are at a relatively moderate risk of coastal flooding. Same goes for places like Miami, New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia at a higher risk, and yet you have people in this case who are willing to go and play the odds, and they believe that the odds are in their favor when it comes to Smith Island and Tangier Island in Virginia. Those folks believe that they are going to be okay in the time that they'll be there, living there, and they're not too worried about what may come decades down the road for them, they say.
You have to think the housing cost, too, is probably part of the appeal. Aaron Gilchrist, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great reporting. That does it for us for this hour and for the one before it. If you missed any of it, catch up on the latest reporting and the newest interviews from our team. You can find us anytime in so many places. See you on Peacock, Hulu, YouTube, and more. Top Story picks up our coverage right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.